Joining us tonight for our KX conversation is Congressman Kelly Armstrong. Congressman Armstrong, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Congressman Armstrong, the Biden administration has announced that they are restoring key provisions of the National Environmental Policy Act. Now, these will be regulations that impact highways, pipelines, oil and gas drilling. What are your thoughts on these provisions that they are trying to restore?
I mean, listen, in 2020, President Trump streamlined and modernized this. One of the biggest things you'll hear from anybody trying to put infrastructure in the ground is that the bureaucracy and the amount of regulatory permitting that's involved is just, it takes so much time, it costs so much more money to get that infrastructure in place. And I think these are actually even a little more onerous because they're talking about, climate actions and climate impacts upstream, downstream, all of these different things that can mean something very different to whichever particular bureaucrat is in charge of doing this. But at the end of the day, what this is going to do is it's going to take longer to get infrastructure in the ground, and it's going to cost taxpayers more money. Those two things will absolutely be true, and that's a bad way to run a federal government.
A big topic in North Dakota right now is carbon capture pipelines. How will that impact the construction that's underway or that's planned to be underway by Summit Carbon Solutions, a multi-billion-dollar carbon capture pipeline?
Well, the original permitting process will obviously be longer, harder, and more expensive. How anybody determines what the climate impact up and downstream to that is anybody's guess, which I think is the real problem with the federal regulation, right? If you don't know what you're regulating or how it's going to be enacted, the very answer of we'll do it on a case-by-case basis is the exact wrong answer in which to impose a regulatory framework. I mean, if you don't have regulatory certainty, whether it's a carbon capture pipeline, a natural gas pipeline, or a transmission line coming from a solar or a wind farm, it's harder to raise money for that project. It takes longer to put it in the ground, and you don't know what the rules of the game are until you're already playing.
What you're saying is there's no standardized rules.
Not that we're aware of yet, but more importantly, I mean, Josh, here's the deal. They're just making it harder, more burdensome to put things into the ground, and they always neglect this part. We live in North Dakota. We care about our climate here. We care about what we're doing here. We love to hunt and fish. We love the outdoors. It's not like if the federal government isn't making this harder for investors and harder for contracting companies and harder for construction things, it's not like it's going to turn into an industrial wasteland. The answer is allow states to do this because we do it quicker, we do it faster, and we do it in a way that is more conducive to getting infrastructure in the ground quicker. But if it takes you 4.5 years to get a project in the ground instead of 2 years to get a project in the ground, the cost of all of that goes up exponentially over the course of time that it takes. And the more regulatory paperwork you have to file, the more fodder that just quite frankly is for most often environmental activists to file suit. And every time litigation is started, that just costs whoever's putting this infrastructure in the ground. It costs them time and it costs them money, which makes it less appealing for investors.
All right, Congressman Kelly Armstrong, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Josh.